In August 1930, Norwegian walrus hunters set foot on a frozen Arctic island almost no one ever reaches. Buried in the snow, they find a half-sunken boat, a diary, a camera with rolls of undeveloped film, and the bodies of 3 men who had been missing for 33 years. And here's what doesn't add up. These men didn't starve to death adrift at sea. They had reached solid ground. They had built a camp. And even so, within a matter of days, all 3 were dead. The question no one has ever fully answered is simple and chilling. What killed them so fast, right when they seemed to be saved? Let's go back. Salomon August Andrée was born in 1854 in the Swedish town of Gränna. He trained as a mechanical engineer, and in 1876, aged 22, he was captivated by the balloon displays at the World's Fair in Philadelphia. That fascination would never leave him. He became Sweden's first aeronaut, and he had an idea that sounded like madness and genius in equal measure. Andrée imagined a daring plan: to cross the Arctic and reach the North Pole, landing in Russia or Canada using a hydrogen balloon. Think about it. By the end of the 19th century, hundreds of people had tried to reach the North Pole, all of them by ship or by sled. All failed, dozens died, but only 3 ever tried it by balloon. The plan ignited national pride. It was met with patriotic enthusiasm in Sweden, a northern nation that had fallen behind in the race to the North Pole. And this was no ordinary funding. The project was backed by the Royal Swedish Academy of Sciences, financed by Alfred Nobel, founder of the Nobel Prizes, and by the King of Sweden. The newspaper Aftonbladet supplied carrier pigeons for communication. That was the plan to stay in touch with the world. The press would be kept informed by buoys dropped into the sea and by carrier pigeons. But this is where the warning signs begin, and there are many. Being able to steer the balloon, even a little, was essential for a safe journey. Yet there was plenty of evidence that the dragline steering technique he himself had invented simply didn't work. On paper, the idea was clever: ropes hanging from the balloon that dragged along the ground or ice, slowing the craft so sails could push it off the wind. In practice, it was another story. His draglines broke, came loose, tangled together, or snagged on the ground, which could yank the low-flying balloon and cause dangerous bounces. No modern Andrée researcher has placed the slightest faith in draglines as a way to steer a balloon. And there was something worse. The polar balloon, the Örnen, the Eagle, was delivered straight to Svalbard from its maker in Paris without ever being tested. When measurements showed it was losing more gas than expected, Andrée refused to admit the risk. An untested balloon, leaking hydrogen, with a steering system that didn't steer. And still, he pressed on. On the 11th of July 1897, the balloon finally lifted off from Danes Island, carrying the expedition leader, Salomon August Andrée, 43, the engineer Knut Frenkel, 27, and the photographer Niels Strindberg, 25. The disaster began at launch. As it rose, parts of the draglines meant to steer the balloon were lost. In other words, it had barely taken flight and already lost the little that let it navigate. The Eagle was visible for 1 hour before it vanished. And then the silence began. What happened next, we would only learn decades later, thanks to the recovered diaries. After Andrée, Strindberg, and Frenkel lifted off from Svalbard in July 1897, the balloon lost hydrogen rapidly and crashed onto the ice pack after just 2 days. They were forced into a crash landing on the 14th of July 1897, after less than 3 days in the air. The dream had ended in a matter of hours, but the real nightmare was only beginning. The explorers came out unharmed, but they now faced an exhausting march south across a landscape of drifting ice. Poorly dressed, poorly equipped, poorly prepared, and shaken by how brutal the terrain was, they would never reach safety. Picture the scene. 3 men hauling sleds and loaded boats across ice floes that shifted beneath their feet, often carrying them backward while they pushed forward. The diaries revealed that the 3 struggled for almost 3 months across the drifting ice, trying to get back to civilization. To survive, they hunted. For Andrée and his team, the extreme cold and hostile surroundings made preparing food difficult, and the men probably ate the meat in less than ideal conditions. Remember that detail, the undercooked meat. We're going to come back to it. Finally, against all odds, they made it. They reached solid ground. In October, they arrived at this island, Kvitoya, and set up camp on its desolate shore. There they died. And that's the riddle. They had survived the impossible, and then, almost immediately, it was all over. It's believed that by around the 8th of October 1897, all 3 men had perished, because every diary entry stops abruptly. Andrée's last diary entry is dated the 8th of October and mentions nothing especially serious happening. No sign of an imminent end, just silence. For 33 years, Sweden knew nothing. Their disappearance was etched into Swedish culture, with countless theories and rumors circulating about their fate. But they were only rumors, until 1930, and here chance steps in. That year had been unusually warm, and the sea was nearly free of ice. The fog was light that afternoon, so some of the men decided to head over to White Island to hunt walrus and explore a little. Then, on the 6th of August 1930, the Norwegian sealing ship Brattvåg, taking advantage of the unusually warm conditions, landed on the normally inaccessible Kvitoya. 2 crew members made a sensational discovery. Among what looked like a long-abandoned camp, they found artifacts including Andrée's diary and a camera with rolls of undeveloped film, along with the remains of the 3 expedition members. And here comes the almost miraculous part. The group of scientists and hunters who found the remains also discovered photographic negatives that could still be developed, along with notebooks and diaries that were still partly readable. Photographs taken by men dead for 3 decades, frozen in the ice, suddenly brought back to life. But let's return to the question that opened this episode. What killed them? The truth is, we don't know for certain. No one knows exactly how the men died because their bodies were cremated and no rigorous autopsy was carried out. The theories are many. The cause remains a mystery. One theory is that they contracted trichinosis from eating polar bear meat. Another, that they died of carbon monoxide poisoning. The most famous hypothesis has a name and a date. The best known and most widely accepted suggestion was put forward by Ernst Treide, a physician, in his 1952 book De Döda på Vitön, The Dead on White Island, that the men succumbed to trichinosis contracted from eating undercooked polar bear meat. Remember that badly prepared meat in the diary? There's the connection. But, and this is what keeps the case from closing, there's a devastating argument against it. Fridtjof Nansen and his companion, Hjalmar Johansson, had lived largely on polar bear meat in exactly the same area for 15 months, with no ill effects. If they survived eating the same thing, why did these 3 die? And there's more. Strindberg apparently died first, since he was found wedged beneath a rock and covered with stones. It's thought he may have died in a polar bear attack, as his clothing showed signs of a struggle. His companions buried him, and then the other 2 fell. So here we still are. A balloon that should never have flown. 3 men who survived the impossible, only to die when they reached land. And a mystery more than a century old that not even the photographs rescued from the ice have managed to solve. Because the final myth to dismantle is this. Legend says the expedition simply vanished into the Arctic sky. It didn't. They didn't disappear into thin air. They fought, they walked, they bled on the ice for almost 3 months. What truly vanished wasn't them, but the answer to how they died. And that answer is still buried with them on White Island.